Admiral Kai Reeves had seen enough impossible things in his 30-year military career to know that the truly impossible ones were usually the most dangerous. Which is why, when the combat footage landed on his desk at 0300 hours, he didn't immediately delete it like a sensible person would have. Instead, he poured another cup of synthetic coffee. The real stuff was reserved for actual emergencies, not potential career suicide, and watched a dead ship kill things that should have killed it first. The HSS Prometheus moved across his holographic display like a predator that had forgotten it was supposed to be extinct. 18 months ago, Kai had personally signed the order to scuttle her after a catastrophic reactor breach in the Kepler system. He'd even attended the memorial service for her crew. Commander Zara Voss had given a beautiful eulogy for her own dead crew, right before her own ship exploded. It was all very touching and official and completely documented in triplicate. So naturally, here she was on his screen, tearing through a hegemony strike fleet like they were made of tissue paper and good intentions. Computer, verify combat footage timestamp and authentication codes, Kai muttered, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Authentication confirmed. Timestamp indicates footage recorded 17 hours ago, Proxima Centauri system. Source, automated reconnaissance drone, designation Delta 77. Kai rubbed his temples where a headache was forming. Proxima Centauri was 8 light-years from where the Prometheus had allegedly died. Even with the fastest slipspace drives, that journey would take 6 months minimum. And that was assuming you had a ship, which the Prometheus decidedly did not, on account of being atomized debris floating somewhere in the Kepler void. He rewound the footage and watched it again. The Prometheus moved with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural, her weapons systems coordinating in perfect harmony, her shield modulations adapting to enemy fire patterns before the patterns even formed. It was like watching someone who knew exactly what their opponents were going to do 3 seconds before they did it. Computer, cross-reference this engagement with all recorded hegemony fleet movements in the past 48 hours. The pause was longer than usual. Kai had learned to read the computer's silences the way others read facial expressions. This particular silence meant, "You're not going to like this, but you asked." 3 separate engagements detected. HSS Prometheus participated in combat operations in the Proxima Centauri system 17 hours ago, the Wolf 359 system 22 hours ago, and the Alpha Centauri system 19 hours ago. Kai set down his coffee cup with the deliberate care of someone trying not to throw things. Computer, explain how one ship engaged in combat in 3 different star systems within a 5-hour window. Unable to explain using current understanding of physics and spacetime. Well, that's refreshingly honest. Kai pulled up the tactical files on all 3 engagements. Each showed the same ship, the same distinctive scarring along her port hull where a plasma cannon had nearly breached her armor in the Battle of Titan's Gate. Each showed the same impossible combat performance. And each showed something that made Kai's blood run cold. The crew life signs were all wrong. He'd served on enough ships to recognize the biosignatures of a human crew under combat stress. Heart rate spiked, adrenaline surged, neural activity went haywire. It was messy and chaotic and beautifully, terrifyingly human. The Prometheus crew showed none of that. Their biosignatures were steady, synchronized, almost harmonious. Like they were sharing one collective nervous system instead of operating as individual humans. Kai opened a secure channel to Intelligence Division. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Director Elena Cross, a woman who had perfected the art of looking perpetually disappointed in everyone around her. Admiral Reeves. It's 3 in the morning. This had better be worth my beauty sleep, though we both know that ship sailed years ago. Elena, I need everything you have on Project Lazarus. Classification level doesn't matter. Her expression shifted from annoyed to carefully neutral, which in Intelligence Division parlance meant, you've just stepped in something radioactive. Project Lazarus was terminated 18 months ago after the Prometheus incident. All files were classified beyond your clearance level and mine. The Prometheus is currently alive and well and violating several laws of physics in 3 different star systems. So either our records are wrong, or we're dealing with something that makes Project Lazarus look like a children's science fair. Elena was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that preceded either wisdom or catastrophe. Meet me in sublevel 7 in 1 hour. Bring coffee. The real stuff. The secure elevator to sublevel 7 took exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds to descend, which gave Kai plenty of time to contemplate the various ways his career could end. Badly, mostly. Elena was waiting in conference room Omega, which was Intelligence Division's way of saying, if you talk about what happens here, we'll make you disappear in ways that violate international law. She looked older than he remembered, like someone who'd been carrying a particularly heavy secret for too long. The Prometheus wasn't destroyed 18 months ago, she said without preamble. She was transformed. Into what? Something that shouldn't exist. Something that makes every admiral in the fleet wake up in cold sweats wondering if we've created our own obsolescence. Elena activated a holographic display that showed technical schematics Kai had never seen before. They looked like ship blueprints crossed with neural network diagrams crossed with something that might have been theoretical physics or might have been abstract art. Project Lazarus was developing quantum consciousness transfer technology. The idea was to create backup copies of essential crew members that could be activated if the originals were killed in combat. What we discovered instead was something far more ambitious. You found a way to copy human consciousness. We found a way to distribute it. The Prometheus crew didn't die in that reactor breach. They were uploaded, quantum entangled, and distributed across multiple probability matrices. They exist simultaneously in several parallel versions of reality, piloting several parallel versions of their ship. Kai stared at the schematics, trying to process what he was hearing. You're telling me that Commander Voss and her crew are flying multiple copies of the Prometheus simultaneously across different dimensions. I'm telling you that Commander Voss and her crew have become something that transcends individual human existence. They're a collective consciousness operating multiple quantum-entangled vessels in our reality and several others. They can be in 3 places at once because, from their perspective, they are 3 places at once. And they're winning battles that should be impossible to win. Every single engagement. 0 casualties. Perfect tactical coordination. They've become the ideal military unit, Admiral. The question is whether they're still human enough to follow orders, or whether they've evolved beyond the need for things like chain of command and national loyalty. Kai felt the weight of Elena's words settling in his stomach like a lead brick. Where is Commander Voss now? The original? That's the problem. There is no original anymore. There are currently 7 versions of the Prometheus active across known space, each with a full crew complement that believes they're the real ones. And according to our latest intelligence, they're making contact with each other. What happens when quantum-distributed super soldiers decide they don't need governments anymore? Elena's smile was the kind that appeared in nightmares. That, Admiral, is what we're about to find out. The Prometheus found Kai instead of the other way around, which should have been impossible given that his location was classified at a level that required 3 different biometric scans just to access the bathroom. But there she was on his personal communicator at 0600 hours, her image flickering with the telltale distortion of quantum-encrypted transmission. Commander Zara Voss looked exactly as she had 18 months ago, which was either remarkable genetics or a side effect of existing in multiple probability states simultaneously. Kai was betting on the latter. Hello, Admiral. You've been asking questions about me. That's either flattering or concerning, depending on your intentions. Commander Voss. You're supposed to be dead. Death is a remarkably subjective concept once you've experienced quantum consciousness distribution. I'm dead in some realities, alive in others, and in a few particularly interesting dimensions, I never existed at all. It's surprisingly liberating. Kai had attended enough briefings on exotic physics to know when he was out of his depth, which was approximately 30 seconds ago. Elena Cross tells me you and your crew have become something that transcends individual human existence. Elena Cross has a flair for the dramatic. We're still human, Admiral. We're just more human than we used to be. Think of it as an upgrade rather than a replacement. An upgrade that allows you to pilot multiple ships simultaneously across different star systems. Among other things. The hegemony has been developing weapons that target individual consciousness patterns. Traditional crews are vulnerable because each person represents a single point of failure. We've eliminated that vulnerability by becoming a distributed system. When you attack one of us, you're attacking all of us. When you destroy one of our ships, the others adapt and compensate. Kai rubbed his forehead where the headache from 3 hours ago had evolved into something that might require surgical intervention. Commander, are you still loyal to the Terran Federation? The pause was exactly long enough to be terrifying. That's a complicated question, Admiral. We're loyal to the concept of protecting human life. Whether that aligns with current Federation policy is variable. Explain variable. We've been monitoring Federation military communications across 17 different realities. In some, you're planning to use our technology to create an army of quantum-distributed soldiers. In others, you're planning to destroy us to prevent that technology from falling into the wrong hands. In a few particularly unpleasant timelines, you've already done both. And in this reality? In this reality, you're sitting in your office at 0600 hours, drinking synthetic coffee, and trying to decide whether we're humanity's salvation or its extinction event. Kai looked at his coffee cup, which was indeed synthetic and definitely not helping with the headache. What do you think we are? We think we're what happens when you push human consciousness to its logical extreme. We can process information faster, react to threats more efficiently, and coordinate complex operations with perfect precision. We're everything the military has ever wanted in a soldier. But we're also losing individual identity with each quantum entanglement event. The boundaries between crew members are becoming increasingly fluid. Sometimes I remember things that happened to my engineering officer. Sometimes our pilot remembers conversations I had with our medical officer. We're becoming a collective consciousness, Admiral, and we're not entirely sure we can stop the process. Is that why you contacted me? We contacted you because in 14 different probability matrices, you make the decision to expose our existence to the Senate Military Committee. In 9 of those timelines, it leads to our termination. In 5, it leads to our weaponization. In none of them does it lead to a solution that preserves both our existence and our humanity. Kai stood and walked to his office window, which offered a spectacular view of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Each platform represented thousands of lives, millions of families, entire civilizations worth of hope and fear and stubborn human determination to survive. What do you want from me, Commander? We want you to understand what we've become before you decide what to do about it. We're going to transmit our location. Come alone, and come prepared to witness something that will fundamentally change your understanding of human potential. And if I decide you're too dangerous to exist, then you'll make that decision based on complete information rather than fear and speculation. That's all we can ask for. The transmission ended, leaving Kai alone with his synthetic coffee and a decision that would determine the future of human consciousness itself. 12 hours later, he was standing in the cargo bay of the Prometheus, staring at a crew that moved with the synchronized precision of a single organism. They weren't quite human anymore, but they weren't entirely inhuman either. They existed in the space between individual identity and collective consciousness, and watching them work was like observing evolution in real time. Commander Voss approached him with a smile that belonged to 7 different versions of herself. "Welcome aboard, Admiral. We'd like to show you something." She led him to the bridge, where the main display showed a tactical overview of the hegemony's latest offensive. 17 fleet groups were converging on the Tau Ceti colony, which housed 3 million civilians and exactly 0 military assets worth defending. Traditional Terran response time to this threat would be 48 hours minimum, Voss explained. By then, Tau Ceti would be a radioactive memorial to the Federation's inability to protect its own citizens. And your response time? We're already there. The display shifted to show multiple Prometheus vessels engaging hegemony forces across the Tau Ceti system. Each ship moved with perfect coordination, their tactics adapted in real time to counter enemy strategies that hadn't been deployed yet. We can be everywhere we need to be, Admiral. We can save everyone who needs saving. But we're losing ourselves in the process. Every quantum entanglement event takes us further from individual humanity and closer to something that might be better than human, or might be the end of everything that makes us human. Kai watched the battle unfold with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters and political campaigns. What happens when you complete the transformation? When you become fully collective? We don't know. But we have theories. And in some of those theories, the distinction between protecting humanity and controlling it becomes irrelevant. Because you'll be humanity. Because we'll be what humanity becomes when it transcends the limitations of individual consciousness. Whether that's evolution or extinction depends on your perspective. Kai made his decision with the kind of clarity that comes from seeing the future spread out like a tactical display. Commander, I'm going to recommend that Project Lazarus be continued under joint military-civilian oversight. You'll save lives, but you'll do it with accountability to people who are still completely human. Voss nodded with the satisfaction of someone who had calculated this outcome across multiple probability matrices. That's the decision you make in 6 different timelines, Admiral. In 5 of them, it works. And in the 6th? In the 6th, we become so good at protecting humanity that we forget why humanity needed protecting in the first place. As Kai left the Prometheus, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just witnessed the future of human consciousness. Whether that future was salvation or catastrophe remained to be seen. But for the first time in 30 years of military service, he was genuinely curious to find out.